It's normal for learner drivers to find reversing a bit difficult at first. Over my 15 years of teaching people to drive, most find it a challenge until they have some experience. In fact, most make the same mistakes, so I'm usually giving the same advice to help them improve. What concerns me though is how many people pass the driving test yet still can't reverse competently. I'll explain later in the video why I think that is, but for now I'm going to go over the common mistakes that learner drivers make which prevents them from reversing with good accuracy and judgment. Mistake number one is trying to use the front of the car to decide which way to steer when going backwards, and this is a classic example. I'm parallel parking around a grey car at the moment and the back of my car is near the curb, and what a learner will generally think is, now I need to get the front of my car towards the curb. The front's pointing that way at the moment, so I need to steer over there to get the front near the curb. And that's what they do, and all that happens is the back gets nearer the curb and the front gets further. So I'll go to first gear now and go back to where I was, just here. This time I'm going to use the mirror to decide which way to steer. I can see the back of my car is pointing towards the curb is over there. I don't want to hit the curb, so I actually need to steer this way, control the back of the car. So I'm going to steer this way, and this time the car straightens with the curb, as you can see in the mirror. Mistake number two is using the wrong wing mirror. At the moment, I'm trying to reverse into this parking space behind me and to my left. In the left wing mirror, I can see the space well, and this is the line I need to line up with. But in the right mirror, I can't see the space at all. It's not this space, it's not this line. The space in the line is behind the car, out of view. But learners sometimes look at the right mirror regardless of which side the space is on. However, if the space is to the right of you, then the right mirror is better because you can see that space more. And when you're reversing into the space and straightening up, that's when you can start to use both mirrors for accuracy, because you can see the left line now appearing in the left mirror and the right line in the right mirror. So you can compare your distance between both lines. Mistake number three when learning how to reverse is simply going too fast. When you're too quick, you don't have as much time to look all round to make sure you're aware of your surroundings, whilst also looking in your mirrors for accuracy. You tend to do one or the other. Also, if you're going quick and you start to lose your position, you lose it more quickly and often by more. And you have less time to judge and adjust your steering. When you're learning how to reverse, going extra slow will give you more time to process the information and learn what you're doing. When you're experienced at driving, going slow when you're reversing is still a good idea because it gives you more time to notice others and more time for others to notice you. So now I'm reversing back slowly, and at this speed I have time to look all around so that I'm aware of the dangers around me. And when I get back to the mirror, it hasn't changed much. So this slow speed is allowing me to combine my observations for danger and my observations for accuracy. Mistake number four is adding too much angle during the parallel park. I'm going to parallel park behind this black Fiesta on the left. And what learners tend to do is they'll add more and more angle. They'll do this. They'll steer all the way towards the curb, and they will get more and more angle to the point where they're either going to hit the curb or hit the car when they want to straighten up. This is not going to work. Whereas what you want to do is steer to the left. Yes, you want maximum steering to get your angle on quickly, but don't get more than about 45 degrees of angle. Then straighten the wheels and then come back in a straight line towards the curb. And when you're near the curb, steer away from the curb to take the angle off. And if you're in a small space like I am now, and you get close to the car behind, what you can do, put it in first gear, steer towards the curb, and go forwards to tuck the nose in. Mistake number five is not straightening the steering once the car is straight. So what learners sometimes do is when they're reversing into a parking space like I am now, and they do well, as you can see, I'm in between the lines in both mirrors now, and the car is straight. They don't straighten the wheel, and they continue, and they end up going too far. And that leads to confusion. They're like, how has this happened? Make sure that once you see the car is straight, in between the lines, straighten the steering to make sure you stay straight and in between the lines. Mistake number 6 is straightening the car too early. Most learners in my experience do this at some point when they're learning how to reverse into a parking space in a car park. What they do is they learn how to get the back of the car pointed towards the space. Great start. But then the moment the back of the car is pointing at the space, they try to straighten. And of course, if they do that here, they're not going to straighten into the space they want. What they need to learn is that once the back of the car is aimed at the space they want, they then need to reverse close to the space before straightening. When they do this, they go into the space that they chose. Mistake number 7 is not being aware that when you're reversing and you steer, the front of your car swings out. And here's an example. I'm about to reverse out of this parking space and there's a car next to me. So I'll pop it in reverse, take the handbrake off, make sure it's safe for me to go backwards, and I'm going to steer that way. And watch what happens to the front of my car. It's going to hit the car next to me and the parking sensors have gone off. So I'll turn them off. So although it's important to make sure you use the back of your car to decide which way to steer, I want to head over there. So I'm going to steer over there. It's also important to think about the front of your car to make sure you don't hit anything. Mistake number 8 is not getting a good start position. You need to get the space behind you before you can reverse into it. I often see learners stop here to park here. And of course that's not going to work because the car does not turn on a turntable like this. It turns with a turning circle like this. Also, understanding that trying to reverse into a parking space from a 90-degree angle is awkward. You're much better off steering to one side to get the space behind you. That way you can see the space in your mirrors and you have less steering to do. It's easier to judge how much to steer and when to steer to stay between the lines. Also, it makes it easier for everybody else in the car park to know what you're about to do. Here's an example of where reversing at a 90-degree angle doesn't work. My other half has to park in the space just after this silver car. So I'm going to try and do that at a 90-degree angle now. I'm going to go as far forward as I can, all the way up to this concrete post until the parking sensor says, please no more, like that. Select reverse and steer all the way towards the space. And you'll see in the rear view camera, I'm just going to hit the car behind. Never going to make it in there from a 90-degree angle. So let's try something else. Let's try getting that space behind me. And what I do is I do what I can just to make sure the back of my car is pointing towards that space. Starting really close to it gives me more space to the right to swing out. And now I'm going to turn to the right. And now the space is appearing behind me. I'll turn the parking sensors off so they don't make so much noise. Usually there is a Renault Capture parked here and a Mercedes E-Class there, and there's a motorbike there as well, so that E-Class sticks out quite a way, yet there's still enough room to do it this way. I'll put my head cam on so you can see what I'm doing. I can now see my space in the mirror though. Although it's wet, I can see the white line and where I've got to go, and I've got eyes on this car as well, so I know if I'm going to clear that. I'll select reverse and I'll make sure it's safe. I'll turn them off because they must be very annoying coming across on the microphone. Make sure it's safe to go back. And now I can reverse in between the line there and this car on the right. And I wouldn't be able to do that. That's a 90-degree angle. And job done. In the interest of fairness though, sometimes you have to reverse into a space from a 90-degree angle. Usually it's more awkward, but sometimes you have to. Here's an example. I want to reverse into this space here. And especially if there was cars parked in the spaces on the left, I would not have space to swing this car around to get the back of my car pointing towards the space I want. So what do? Well, I have to reverse at it and go into it from a 90-degree angle. So I won't be able to drive into this forwards and then reverse. I'm going to have to turn around and approach it going backwards. So I'll do that now. And obviously, if I was planning to reverse into there as I came into this car park, I would be already prepared for that and I wouldn't need to turn around like I am now because I would have planned for that as I came in. What I'd have done is come in like this, steered to the left, give myself more room, swing it round to the right like that, and now the back of my car is pointing the other way almost. Turn that way. Now I'm approaching it backwards and I'm able to try and go into it from a 90-degree angle. So I'll put the head cam on so you can see what I'm doing. You can see the space now in that mirror. I've got to go between those lines. So I make sure it's safe, come back. I've got this mirror here, helps if I put it in reverse, that was in neutral. Got this mirror here to show me what's on my right, and I've got that mirror there showing me that space. So let's try and come back again. There's the space. You see I'm gradually entering it here. I can see if I'm going to hit this car here, which I'm not. Got that space there. It is more difficult doing it this way, but sometimes you have to. Now I'm getting in between the line, the car and the line, and on this side too. You can just about see that there in that mirror. I don't know if you can get that on this camera. And what I might probably do here, just to make it easier, put it in first, go forwards up to where the cars are in front of me, like that. So I get these lines in my mirrors again, nice and clear, just to make sure I'm nice and centered and to know if I need to make an adjustment. And now it's just a case of coming back to the motorbike behind me and obviously stopping before I hit that. There we go. Mistake number 9 is not having good enough observations, and this is usually caused by speed. The learner driver is reversing back too quickly to have time to look all around and make sure they're aware of what's approaching. They only have time to look in their mirrors for accuracy, where they're going. But it's important when you're reversing to make sure you notice anything before it has a chance to reach you. If you're reversing on your driving test in Great Britain and a pedestrian, cyclist or vehicle manages to reach you before you notice them, then you most likely won't pass the test. It's important to be aware of your surroundings and any approaching dangers when you're reversing to make sure you make good decisions and reverse safely. This is the part of the video where I may annoy some people, because I'm going to talk about why I believe so many people can't reverse even though they have passed the driving test. Surely you would think once you've passed the driving test, you have proven that you can reverse competently, but that's not the case. Some people are not taught how to reverse. They're taught a specific set of instructions to complete a specific maneuver in a specific car. A good example is the free line method. When you're trying to reverse into a parking space in a car park, drive past the parking space until you're 3 lines forwards and that line lines up with somewhere on the door, and the instructor may put a sticker on the door so you know when to steer. Steer all the way and then the car should go in the space. But let's be honest, has that taught that person how to reverse a car? Has it given them skill? Are they going to be able to reverse any car in any situation they find themselves in? For example, on a country road where they meet an oncoming car and have to reverse back to the closest passing space, or reversing into a garage, or reversing between 2 objects in any random situation they happen to find themselves in. I don't think so. It's a recipe to try and get somebody through a test quickly, a set of instructions, not a skill. A skill takes time. An example of a recipe would be a poached egg. Poach it for 4 minutes. If you follow that recipe, you may get a good egg, you may not. Depends how hot the water is, how big the egg is, how cold the egg is when you put it in there. What you're better off doing if you actually want to get consistent, good poached eggs is to learn the skill of how firm it is when it's cooked. How much does it wobble, instead of just going by the minutes. And the same thing is true when reversing. To get skillful at reversing, you have to put time into reversing, using the mirrors to judge where you're going and learning how much and which way to steer to go where you want to go. Something else I should mention is that all cars are different. They're different sizes and have different turning circles. So those instructions or that recipe you've been given to complete a maneuver in your instructor's car is unlikely going to work in your own car, which is why it's so important to learn how to look in your mirrors, see where you are and steer where you want to go. It's like driving forwards. When you go left at the end of the road, you don't turn the wheel a set amount, you turn it enough until the car goes where you want. The same thing is true when you're reversing. I learnt to drive in 2004 and I wasn't taught how to use my mirrors for reversing. I was taught the free line method and other instructions on how to do other maneuvers, which I can't actually remember now anyway. And that free line method didn't work in the car that I had once I had passed my test. I learnt to drive in a 2004 Ford Fiesta Finesse 1.4 TDCi, and my car was a 1992 Vauxhall Astra 1.6 petrol GLS. Yes, the GLS with the velour seats. And the free line method didn't work. Sure, I could probably trial and error find out when I needed to steer and put a new sticker on my door for that particular car, but I didn't want to kid myself. I knew that I wasn't very good at reversing, and I have this vivid memory that sticks with me to this day of me walking towards Tesco Hive in Colchester in the car park. This black Mark IV VW Golf drives past me, and the driver, she swings the nose round, looks in her mirrors, uses her steering and guides the car back perfectly between the lines. And I was jealous. I was like, I want to park like her. So I set about trying to teach myself how to do that. In the process though, I hit two objects. I hit a big post in a multi-storey car park, one that takes up some of your space, but I should have noticed it. And I hit a car that was reversing out of their space as I was reversing in, and the front of my car hit theirs as the back of theirs was coming out. Now some people will say they hit you, you were reversing in, you're already on the road, they were reversing out, but I don't care. What matters to me is I should have noticed them. And the reason why I didn't notice the posts and I didn't notice them was because I was fixated on the mirror as I was trying to learn the nuances of using the mirrors and the steering. I think if I was taught that on my lessons and if I was taught to combine that with looking around so I weren't so fixated on it, maybe I wouldn't have hit anything when I was driving after my test. One thing is for sure though, hitting those two things certainly taught me to maintain good awareness of my surroundings whilst I'm reversing. Since then, I haven't hit anything. It's important to keep looking around because things do change. You may think nothing's coming, but the moment you look away, something starts coming and it gets to you quicker than you may expect. This is how I introduce my pupils to reversing. I take them to a car park with spaces opposite each other, and then I get them to reverse from one space to one behind them, either to the left or right, not the space directly behind them because that would be too easy. I'm in the passenger seat and I'll tell them I'm going to do the speed. I'm doing the pedals, I'm checking it's safe. You just need to do the steering. And do you see that space over there? You've got to steer into that space. Are you ready? Huh? Ready or not? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're moving now. Steer. Go on, steer. Get in the space. Look at the space. Get in that space over there. And you'll be surprised how quickly they pick this up. Often they steer the wrong way to begin with, but without too many attempts, they get the car aimed at where it needs to go. Where I have to usually help them is when to straighten. They get the car aimed at the space and then they straighten too early. And of course, as I explained earlier in this video, that's not going to work. And another thing they often do wrong is once the car is in the space and in between the lines, they don't straighten the wheels, so then they lose their position. So I have to help them there also. But this is a quick and easy, also a safe and fun way to improve parking skill or reversing skill and using the mirrors. And it stops my pupils from asking me that question, how much do I steer? It's like saying, how hard do I throw a ball? Hard enough that you get the ball where you want it to be. And it's the same with steering. Steer enough that you go where you want to go. And what's good about this exercise is it gets them focusing on where they want to go and not thinking so much about the wheel. They're looking where they want to go and they're just turning this thing until it gets to where they want to be. The vast majority of my pupils are able to steer in between the lines independently within 10 attempts of that exercise. Many do it in less, some only take a few. What about dry steering though? Well, I've made a video about that. I'll leave a link up there. Dry steering is when you turn the wheel when the car's not moving. Now, I've had this car for 10 years next week. It's the 23rd of January 2024 today when I'm filming, and I picked the car up on the 1st of February 2014. I was taught not to dry steer. I used to teach not to dry steer. And when I had this car, I also used to teach my pupils not to dry steer. But one day, many years ago now, I can't remember when, I decided enough is enough. This is just making learning how to reverse so much harder. I'm going to allow my pupils to dry steer. I know it's not marked on the test, and I thought I'll see what happens, see if it makes life easier. And yes, I noticed a big difference. My pupils are finding it easier to learn how to reverse when they were able to steer the wheel without moving. What about car wear? Well, I've not noticed any difference. When I first got this car, I used to avoid dry steering myself and not allow my pupils to dry steer. And for many years now, it has been driven with dry steering. I've allowed it and I've not noticed any problems. My tyres actually last longer. I don't think that's got anything to do with dry steering. I think that's because tyre technology is improving. A coincidence though is that within 30,000 miles of owning this car, the steering rack needed replacing, and that was during a period when I used to avoid dry steering. Since it's been replaced, it hasn't needed to be replaced again, and the car now has 204,000 miles on the clock. And many of those miles, probably most of them, have included dry steering. So I can't say that's the case for all cars, but certainly this 10-year-old Seat Leon doesn't seem to be affected by steering the wheel when you're not moving. On your driving test, there's no set method that you need to use for reversing or parking. You can try to reverse into a car park parking space from a 90-degree angle, or you can pull the nose out, get the space behind you, and make it easier. It's up to you. You need to make sure that you're safe and legal. And part of being safe is having good control of the car and having good observations. So the car should not be shooting back suddenly and then suddenly stopping, or rolling loads the wrong way. And for your observations, you should notice anybody from any direction approaching you before they have a chance to reach you. If you're safe and legal, have good control and observations, then you should pass, and you can choose the method. Well, I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy, and that takes away a big stress from the owner of that car. Via the link at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com, because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest. And you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like without having to do the whole quote, which is a quick and easy way to compare how much it costs to insure different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.